126. Oh, in the gray hymnal.
Good morning. Welcome to the Community Church of Chapel Hill, Unitarian Universalist. My name is Kevin Baston, and I'm a member of the Worship Associate Ministry here at the church. Whoever you are, whomever you love, however you arrived at this beloved place, you are welcome here. I especially want to welcome any visitors or newcomers to our church and to call your attention to the special note for you, welcome guests and newcomers, on the back side of the order of service. For those attending online, links to the order of service and today's hymns were provided in the morning's email. A few things to keep in mind this morning. As a reminder, we are masking inside on Sunday mornings as a way of striving to be an inclusive community. Masking is now optional in all outdoor spaces here at the church. To build community and connection, after the service, we invite you to gather for fellowship in the courtyard, which is just outside the main entrance of the church, or in our other gathering area, which is behind the Jones building and includes the porch, grassy area, and playground. In the courtyard, Rachel Rose and the welcoming committee will be hosting an in-person Sunday social with coffee and tea available at the cart. You can also join us for an online small group social at 1 p.m. You will find the Zoom link for the online social in today's morning email. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Clarence Mayo Jr., the artist whose work is now up in the sanctuary. The title of his show is The Evolution of Identity, Defining Myself. Clarence's work is inspired by the indigenous cultures of Africa, Native America, and Latin America. His themes are the history and struggles of African Americans, the power of the sun and the moon, fertility, the supernatural, religious ceremonies, and social rituals. Clarence will be available after the service and would look forward to talking with anyone interested in his work. And the table in the back or in the front, sort of as you come in, has some more information as well. So now please turn off or silence any cell phones during our service so we can maintain a worshipful experience.
Well, we're going to have a worshipful experience after I make an announcement. So as a minister, I wear a lot of hats. Got this one here. And I also have got the minister hat. And I've got the another hat that I wear is the chief of staff hat. And this year, somehow I've found myself wearing another hat, which is the hat of the hype man for the fall auction. Now, I love the fall auction because it gives me a chance to wear lots and lots of different hats. So, for example, last year I bought UNC basketball tickets that were donated by Bill and Mary Beth. So I got to wear my UNC hat. And a few years earlier, I bought the Christmas stocking cap that Salem McNee knitted. So you should see our family's holiday pictures. They're lovely. And this year, I've got my eye on a few different items that are already been offered. So for example, Allison and Paul Eskildson are offering a chili dinner and cowboy sing-along, so I might get a chance to wear this hat. Or Don and Susan Blanchard are offering a seafood dinner, so I might get a chance to wear this hat. Or Mike and Bonnie Gilliam are offering a French dinner, so I might get... I'm definitely keeping this one. So that's some of the hats that I get to wear, but now it's your turn. I'll pick this up during the first hymn. Now it's your turn. I want you to put on your hat, your thinking cap. Bidding for the fall auction starts in just under 2 weeks, and we still need a lot of donations to make our goals. Every year, the most popular items are dinners, themed parties, and other gatherings that bring people in the church together and help us not only to raise funds, but to raise fun. But you can also offer services, fun items, tickets, or anything else that you may have to offer. You can give through the online fall auction website, and we're hoping for a whole bunch more items to be offered so that we can have a very successful fall auction. Now we will start worship together. I invite you to stand in body or in spirit as we sing number 1028, The Fire of Commitment. It's in the Teal hymnal, and I invite you to sing out.
Set
This morning's call to worship offers some questions and ideas to consider. What is the most courageous thing you've ever done? When has courage failed you? What courage are you trying to find in your life right now? Courage takes many shapes. Courage can mean speaking the truth that must be named. Courage can mean changing something that needs to be changed. It can mean admitting you were wrong and be willing to grow and change. Come in this hour, let us face ourselves. Come in this hour, let us consider courage. Come, step into this brave space. Come, let us worship together. The words for our chalice lighting are by Maureen Killeran. You will find them in the order of service. Please join me in reading them. In these hard times, let us look first to the response of love. In the midst of challenge, may our chalice flame bear witness to the inherent worth and dignity of every human being. In the midst of uncertainty, may our chalice be a beacon of encouragement, that our values may guide our choices. Let us look first to the response of love.
I want to let you know that the words to this prayer for Ukraine, we're going to be singing the original Ukrainian words, but the English translation is in your order of service on the third page, prayer for Ukraine. And I think Ken is going to be putting up the words online for the people watching online as well.
Each week, we hold a time in our service for lifting up the joys and the sorrows that we bring to this service and to this community. It's our custom that if you've come this morning with either a significant personal joy or a significant personal sorrow, you're invited to come forward, place a stone in the water bowl, say your name, and briefly, in a sentence or two, share your joy or your sorrow. Let us enter into this time of tenderness and into this time of trust. Are there any joys and sorrows this morning?
Hi, I'm Kari Andrade, and it's a great joy. I was able to see Barbara Rodbell last week. It was her 97th birthday, and she's doing quite well. Thursday, there was a ceremony in Berlin, which her children attended, where there was a laying of a Stolperstein at her family home in Berlin, that they're laying stones of people that were persecuted by the Nazis. And so her family was recognized on Thursday. And another aside, Laura Hillenbrand, who wrote Unbroken and Seabiscuit, is working on a book about her life. And she sends her love every time I see her. She says how much she misses the church and her church family.
Hi, sorry, Eileen Reagan, and I am placing the stone today for my niece and former foster daughter, Alona. Some of you will remember her when she catapulted into my life when she was 11 years old, when I plucked her out of foster care. The reason I'm bringing her up today is twofold. I am still so grateful to this community for the kindness and support and love shown to a child who had known almost none until that point. It was like so powerful. The other reason is she is suffering from a somewhat mysterious seizure disorder. She's having seizures just about every day and has had for some time now, and she's getting really good care, but it's really discouraging and exhausting, and it is almost certainly related to the trauma and abuse she suffered for most of her childhood until she got here. So it's very difficult, and she's very discouraged, so keep her in your thoughts. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Demia Wright. I'm sharing a stone for my cousin Diane. A couple months ago, I mentioned that she was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and she had successful Whipple surgery like 2 weeks ago. So it's extremely complicated surgery, but she's said that she was a model patient and she came through okay. She has a long road ahead of her still, including more chemotherapy, but so far, some progress. So thanks for keeping her in your thoughts.
Hello, my name is Shannon Tileman, and my son and I, Jordan, my son and I, are not quite members of the church yet, but we hope to become members this year. I have a joy today in that I have a new son. I am a host exchange parent for Yakov from Serbia. So he'll be with us for the whole school year, and his English is fantastic, so I'm sure he would like to talk to any and all of you. Just welcome him, please. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Melva Oken, and I have two joys to share. One is yesterday with a team of the Side with Love Women of the Church, we organized 2,000 postcards into packets, and we had such an over-response from the church, we're going to order more. This is Get Out the Vote postcards to go to voters of color who don't vote in the non-presidential year, to encourage them to please get out. My second joy is probably one of the largest UU congregations in the country. The First Unitarian Church of Portland, 1,000-member church, has decided they're going to put all their political energy to helping us here in North Carolina. And so, really, Lisa Garcia Sampson, of course, our great leader here, who Thom has supported and our church has supported. They've already sent 3,000 handwritten letters into Cabarrus County, which has been identified as one of the key counties, and they're committed to sending 10,000 letters and 8 nights of phone banking. So we need to rise to the occasion to our sisters and brothers in Portland. We're doing a great effort. If you have any questions, come to the Side with Love table. Thank you.
I'll place the final stone, as I do each week, for all those joys and sorrows that we hold in our hearts that were not spoken. I invite you to please join with me in the spirit of prayer and meditation. There's God, source of life and love. We come, as we do each week, carrying with us anxiety and grief and struggles of our own lives and the struggles to make the world more just. We carry along with it, as we do each week, our joy, our gratitude for ourselves, our gratitude for one another, and our gratitude for this life we share, this world we share. We ask, amidst even our personal prayers, for courage, for the courage to face illness and disappointment, for the courage to reach out and welcome in someone who is new. We ask as well for that deeper courage that comes with daily living, that comes with our choices of how to face each day. Amidst the joys and the sorrows of all of our lives, we mingle the prayers of this community with all of the joys and sorrows shared. And I invite you to hold for a time these prayers in your heart as we hold together a time of silence. I invite you to be still with me. Amen. And blessed be. Let us sing together. Our next hymn is in the Teal hymnal. It's number 1009, Meditation on Breathing. And I invite you to join in singing.
When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe in, when I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, you go too fast. When I breathe in, I breathe in. When I breathe, I breathe out.
This morning's reading is an excerpt from poet David Whyte's book, Consolations, the solace, nourishment, and underlying meaning of everyday words. Courage is a word that tempts us to think outwardly, to run bravely against opposing fire, to do something under besieging circumstances, and perhaps above all, to be seen to do it in public, to show courage, to be celebrated in story, rewarded with medals, given the accolade. But a look at its linguistic origins is to look in a more interior direction and toward its original template, the old Norman French cœur, or heart. Courage is the measure of our heartfelt participation with life, with another, with a community, a work, a future. To be courageous is not necessarily to go anywhere or do anything except to make conscious those things we already feel deeply, and then to live through the unending vulnerabilities of those consequences. To be courageous is to seat our feelings deeply in the body and in the world, to live up and into the necessities of relationships that often already exist, with things we find we already care deeply about, with a person, a future, a possibility in society, or with an unknown that begs us on and always has begged us on. To be courageous is to stay close to the way we are made. The French philosopher, Camus, used to tell himself quietly to live to the point of tears, not as a call for maudlin sentimentality, but as an invitation to the deep privilege of belonging and the way belonging affects us, shapes us, and breaks our heart at a fundamental level. It is a fundamental dynamic of human incarnation to be moved by what we feel, as if surprised by the actuality and privilege of love and affection and its possible loss. Courage is what love looks like when tested by the simple, everyday necessities of being alive. We will now take an offering that allows us to exercise generosity of spirit, an offering that will support the self-sustaining church and its many ministries. Your gifts will be most gratefully received. Baskets will be sent through the congregation during the offertory hymn, but please know that there's also a QR code on the back of the order of service for electronic gifts. Using your camera, the QR code will take you to the online offertory page.
I have no idea how I stumbled upon it, but I recently came across a short film. The film was actually posted many years ago on the New York Times website in the opinion section, of all places, even though the film doesn't express any opinions. The film is 16 minutes long and was made in Sweden, so it's in Swedish, with English subtitles, thankfully. And it is called 10-Meter Tower. And the whole film, all 16 minutes, consists of different people standing on the platform of a 10-meter diving tower and trying to summon the courage, the bravery, to jump and fall the 33 or so feet into the swimming pool below. It was a fascinating film. A few people jump easily. A few people take one look down, turn around, and climb the ladder down. And most people spend time wrestling with, agonizing over the decision to jump or not jump. They pace, they talk to themselves, they psych themselves up, they console themselves and try to ease their nerves. They approach the edge, retreat, approach again. I loved this film so much. I hope you don't mind that I give you a few spoilers. One thing that I loved is that it's basically impossible to judge who would jump and who wouldn't. The little girl, who appears to be about 11 or 12, takes only a few seconds and just goes right over. The young man, heavily tattooed, cannot bring himself to jump and descends the ladder. And one look at him and you think, man, this guy he must do extreme sports all the time. But he climbs down. The very sensible looking woman who appears so out of place on top of the 10-meter tower. Well, I don't want to give everything away. The short film is about courage, sort of, maybe. Perhaps it is about one kind of courage, what we might call daring courage. Daring courage involves doing things that might be thrill-seeking. Climbing mountains, skydiving, scuba diving with sharks, or jumping off a 10-meter diving platform. It seems fair, I think, to describe that as a kind of courage. But there is far more to courage than thrill-seeking. Another form of courage that we normally think of as courage might be called self-sacrificial courage, or valor. Valor is a form of courage that seems appropriate to invoke on this particular day, September 11th. This is the type of courage exemplified by those first responders, the firefighters and police officers and paramedics, the ones who rushed towards the towers even as everyone else was running away from them. What stands out to me about this type of courage, this valor, is how selfless, indeed how self-sacrificing it is. Valor is a form of courage that says, I'm willing to put my own safety, even my own life, on the line for service to another, perhaps to one whose life I'm sworn to protect and defend. Or I'm willing to put my own life on the line for a cause that is greater than myself. Valor is self-transcending and self-denying. However, I want to expand the concept of courage even further, beyond daring and thrill-seeking, and beyond selfless, self-sacrificing valor. And it is this other kind of courage that I want to explore this morning. Earlier this summer, I designed a service about imperfection. And for that service, I selected a reading from Brené Brown's book, The Gift of Imperfection. Part of that reading went like this. The root of the word courage is cor, the Latin word for heart. In one of its earliest forms, the word courage had a very different definition than it does today. Courage originally meant to speak one's mind by telling all one's heart. Over time, this definition has changed, and today courage is more synonymous with being heroic. Heroics is important, and we certainly need heroes, but I think we've lost touch with the idea that speaking honestly and openly about who we are and about what we're feeling and about our experiences, good and bad, is the definition of courage. Heroics is often about putting our life on the line. Ordinary courage is about putting our vulnerability on the line. Ordinary courage is about putting our vulnerability on the line. So what led me to choose this sermon topic? Well, a couple of things. For one, I found that Swedish film, and I kind of wanted to mention it, but I don't think that's what led me to give this sermon. And then there's this joke that I'm going to tell probably repeatedly through the year, and you're going to have to bear with me, which is that the Unitarian Universalist has this program called Soul Matters, which puts out a theme for every month. And I joked in a sermon last month that I'm planning to preach on each of the Soul Matters themes through the year, only I would preach on them a month early and without using any of the resources provided. And the Soul Matter themes for October just happens to be courage. So that's why you're getting it in September, because I really am that difficult. Really? Ask some people. But that's not really the reason either. The real reason is that at some point, the real reason is that over the past couple of weeks, I've been thinking a lot. Today marks our first time having 2 services since March of 2020, the beginning of March 2020. We're having new firsts. We had our first, a couple weeks ago, our first inside water communion in 3 years. We had our first potluck with our first picnic potluck last night. And we have all these firsts, and I've been sort of thinking back over these past 2+ years and thinking and reflecting on different things. And one of the things that I became aware of was that at some point during the pandemic, I began to change the way that I prayed. Which is to say, I began to pray for courage. And this prayer for courage came up over and over and over again. And before the pandemic, I'm not sure I've ever prayed for courage, at least not regularly, and I wanted to explore what this is about. It's been said that ministers preach the sermons they themselves need to hear. I think that is true. So a little digression. When I first became a minister, I decided that most of the time, usually what I would do for our meditation or prayer during the service is that after joys and sorrows, I would go unscripted, and that I would just go to the microphone and pray extemporaneously about whatever was in the room and whatever was in my heart at that moment. And to do that unscripted is kind of vulnerable. It's kind of vulnerable. And sometimes I just sort of accept that it will be, and sometimes I stumble over words, and sometimes I'm at a loss for words, and sometimes the words just all come out, or I think that they do, and then I go watch it and it doesn't. And during the pandemic, I was thinking about, as that disrupted time and how things were different. During the pandemic, I'd come into the sanctuary on Saturday morning, and I'd set up my phone in a tripod right over here where Amy's sitting. And the table was right here where the chalice was, and I would place the stones for joys and sorrows, and then I would just sort of all alone pray extemporaneously. And I found that over and over again, if you go back and watch the videos, over and over again, at least this is my memory of it, that I was praying for courage each and every week. And what is that all about? It certainly wasn't a prayer to be daring. It wasn't like, I'm about to go skydiving, please let me not wimp out. And it wasn't a prayer for valor in the face of COVID. It wasn't, God, help me be brave enough to go to the grocery store this week. It was more of an internal type of courage to face the challenges and anxieties of life and of these troubled times, and to live wholeheartedly in spite of them. To live with assurance in spite of these troubled times. I think of the book by Paul Tillich, who was a great 20th century Christian theologian, and his most well-known book is called The Courage to Be, The Courage to Be. Tillich writes that courage is self-affirmation in the face of anxiety. Self-affirmation in the face of anxiety. What does that even mean? I think it means something like this. That we live, as Tillich did in his day, we live today in a time of anxiety and uncertainty. And sometimes we can locate the source of that anxiety as an opponent or a foe. And courage can look like the strength and the determination to push back against that foe. And yes, that type of courage is very real. But the source of anxiety isn't always external to us. For Tillich, in his day, he wrote that the sources of existential anxiety were death and guilt and the threat of non-being. And for us right now, the times in which we are living, if we're paying any sort of attention, are threatening in their own way, threatening to the established order of things in terms of our identities, in terms of the systems and structures of human society in which we live, in terms of the sustainability of the planet we call home. We are standing on shifting sands, and a lot of the stories of the world in which we live and stories of who we are unraveling. And the antidote to this anxiety is the courage to be. The courage to pursue meaning in the midst of meaninglessness, and community in the midst of forces that divide us, and faith in the midst of fear. As the hymn we'll sing at the end of the service goes, grant us wisdom, grant us courage for the living of these days, and for the facing of this hour. Yes, these times do call for valor and bravery in the work for justice. They certainly do. And they also call for existential courage, the courage to be. As David White said in our reading, courage is the measure of our heartfelt participation with life, with another, with a community, a work, a future. My prayers for courage, I think, were of this sort. That in the midst of disruption and uncertainty and instability and crisis, even then it's worth having the courage to step into participation with life and with another and with community and with the future. And so I ask you, what courage would you seek this day? Do you seek the courage to find deeper self-understanding and awareness? Do you seek the courage to face the challenges in your life? Do you face the courage to say yes, even when life is hard, even when it's hard? In conclusion, I want to return to that video that I described at the beginning. Probably the most interesting people in the video were what I assume to be a young couple, boyfriend and girlfriend, who were there together. Most people were there kind of alone, but they were there together. And they had this really wonderful interaction. The guy was very agitated and knees shaking, and you can actually see his knees shake. And his girlfriend is just sort of cool as a cucumber. And at one point, she's sort of talking to him and encouraging. And he says to her, he says, "I'm not listening. I need to do this myself. But your voice is soothing." And courage is both like that. Like, it is something that we have in ourselves. It's that courage to be as individuals. But it's also something we give each other with. And so he does get up the courage and goes. And she lets out a big laugh and then just goes next. No thought. So as we seek our own courage, let us also remember that we are not alone. Amen. Blessed be. Thank you. And let us sing our closing hymn of the morning. It is it's a classic churchy hymn that I chose for the lyrics, and so I invite you to sing it out. It's number 115, God of Grace and God of Glory. And I invite you to rise in body or in spirit as we sing together.
You will find the words for extinguishing the chalice in your order of service. Please join me in reading them. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. I'd like to take a moment just to thank and acknowledge everyone who contributed to this morning's service, from the welcoming to the audio and visual and music. So thank you. And now it's time for us to sing Shalom. If you'd like to hold hands with those around you, please indicate that by just putting your hands out to either side. If not, you may cross your hands over your chest.